Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Chandra Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Chainita Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramata Pari Vrajakacharya Stotarapati Shimad His Divine Grace Hai Charana Ravinda Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada ISKCON BBD Founder Trivia Save the whole world, Srila Prabhupada ki. Jai Nitya Vishnu Vishnu Pad Paramahansa Parivrajaka Charja Stotra Sartasi Srimad Isvangashra Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki. Nama Charja Shri Dastakur ki. Brahmzakaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Govardhana Radha Kun Giri Govardhana ki. Brajbhumi Shivindam ki Navdip Mayapur Damaki Purushtam Chatra Taripudamaki Ganga Maiki Jamuna Maiki Bhakti Devi ki Tulasi Maharani ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Jai Nitai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to somebody, all glories to somebody, all glories to somebody, all glories to all glories to Lord Krishna, Shri Guru and Shri Garanga, all glories to Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. What was? Okay, thank you. Sarva Kama Dugham Divyam Sarva Kama Dugham Divyam Sarva Kama Dugham Divyam Sava Ratna Samanvitam Savaratna Samanvitam Savaratna Samanvitam Sarvakama Dukham Divyam Savaratna Samanvitam Savaridhi Upachayodarkam Savaridhyupachayodarkam Sarvadhyupachayodarkam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Sarvadhyupachayodarkam Mani Stambhair Upaskritam Sarvakama Dukham Divyam Sarvaratna Samanvitam Savardhyupachayodarkam Manistambhair Upaskritam Sarvakama Dukham Divyam Savaratna Samanvitam Sarvadhyupachayodarkam Manistambhair Upaskritam Vaishnavis. Sarva, all kama, desires, dugham, yielding, divyam, wonderful, savaratna, all sorts of jewels, samanvitam, bedecked with, sarva, all, ridhi, of wealth, upachaya, increase, udakam, gradual, mani, of precious stones, stambhai, with pillars, upaskritam, adorned. Translation. It was a wonderful structure, bedecked with all sorts of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time. Responsively, please. It was a wonderful structure, bedecked with all sorts of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time. Quite different from what we experience in this material world, isn't it? Everything decreases with the duration of time. Purport. The castle created in the sky by Karma Muni may be called a castle in the air, but by his mystic power of yoga, Karma Muni actually constructed a huge castle in the air. To our feeble imagination, a castle in the sky is an impossibility, but if we scrutinizingly consider the matter, we can understand that it is not impossible at all. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead can create so many planets carrying millions of castles in the air, a perfect yogi like Karma Muni can easily construct one castle in the air. The castle is described as Sarva Kama Dugham, yielding whatever one desired. It was full of jewels. Even the pillars were made of pearls and valuable stones. These valuable jewels and stones were not subject to deterioration, but were everlastingly and increasingly opulent. We sometimes hear of castles thus bedecked on the surface of this earth also. The castles constructed by Lord Krishna for his 16,108 wives were so bedecked with jewels that there was no need of lamplight during the night. So the next about 10 verses, I think, will describe this wonderful city that Karma Muni created by his mystic power. And we see that, a materialistic person may create so many or construct so many wonderful things by their mystic arrangement, yet we see for someone who's got material desire, when they do these types of things, their desires just increase. But we see with Karma Muni, it's exactly the opposite. If we, you'll see as we read through this story how he and Devahuti, they traveled around in this mystic castle, which just went anywhere by his will. And they went to different gardens of the Devas and so many different places. And in the end, after thousands of years traveling like this, he went back and lived in his hermitage again. He wasn't attached to it. Whereas, so many of us have nice facility, and we have these nice facilities, and then someone just goes, okay, go live in a thatched hut in the forest. No thanks. So, dirt floor, stuff like that, no way. I mean, I remember living in Mayapur for some time in thatched huts with earthen floors. It's like, it's not me. I just don't do things like that, I like comfortable beds and things like that. And, excuse me, we see with this castle also, is it's like to construct something like this in the modern day and age that floated in the sky. Could you imagine the mechanical arrangements people would have to do and how expensive it would be, not just to build, but to run? They'd have to have all sorts of, they don't even really have the technology at this point, but they'd have to have all sorts of engines running to keep flying and stuff like that. And if one thing went wrong, it would crash. And everything would be destroyed. But this, just by Kardama Muni's yogic mystic power, and it says here, in this verse, it says, is this verse or the previous verse? It said, in verse 12, it said, Kardama exercised his yogic mystic power and instantly produced an aerial mansion that could travel at his will. Instantly. It wasn't like he had to spend, 5-10 years constructing a thing, had to spend millions of dollars and get, all these resources and technology and this thing and that thing. He just desired it and it appeared. This is the prowess of a very, very advanced, perfected bhakti yogi. And we see, it describes in the previous chapters, how Kardama Muni, he practiced his mystic yoga for 10,000 years. Let's go right back. He was instructed by Brahma to create progeny. Because Brahma, this canto deals quite a bit with Visharga, the secondary creation. And so Brahma, in his contemplation, because in this canto we also have Brahma's prayers for creative energy, he's wanting to populate the universe, so he's praying to Krishna, how do I populate the universe? And so he's produced from his body, just, at will, he's produced various great living entities, very powerful living entities, perfected living entities. Even we see, if you go back to chapter 20, I think it is, in this canto, how he was contemplating how to create, and then as he was contemplating like this, Swayambhuva Manu and Satarupa appeared from his body, and they were the first living entities, and so he instructed them to create. And of course, the pastime of Varaha Deva was elaborated because the earth was down in the water and stuff like that, because they were saying, well, where are we going to exist, where are we going to live, and where will we create? And so he brought the earth out of the water, etc. And so then these various living entities, like different great yogis and things, were created by Brahma, and Kardama Muni was one of them. And so Brahma then instructed Kardama Muni to create progeny. And so Kardama Muni, because he has a devotional attitude, he understood, okay, the only way I can do this is by meditation on the Supreme Person of Godhead. So he engaged in meditating on the Lord for 10,000 years. And even though he engaged in meditation with the purpose of creating progeny, it wasn't like his attitude was to enjoy his senses. His attitude was to do his service. He'd been given an instruction by Brahma to create progeny, so he took this as his duty. And therefore he sat down, he meditated upon the Lord for 10,000 years. And then when Lord Vishnu appeared to him, the Lord was very satisfied. And we can understand this because there's, I can't remember, let me see if I can find it quickly. There's two really interesting statements here. Where are they? That help us to understand that the Lord was actually satisfied. Yeah, I think I've got it here. Sorry, I just don't have such a good memory. So it didn't back up. All right. So essentially he's saying, he's saying I'm satisfied with your service because you've engaged in this tapasya to please me, and you'll never experience any dissatisfaction or misfortune because of this service you've done for me. So we can see that even though he had this desire to create progeny, because he engaged in service with a pure motive to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the Lord appeared to him. And he also said, you'll be never frustrated in your desires. And so we see that Kadamba Muni's intention really was to achieve perfection in God consciousness. His intention wasn't to have progeny. That wasn't his idea. It was just to have a big empire, big family, things like that, and just never-ending expansion. No, his intention was to become spiritually perfect. His intention was to do the service that he was instructed by his preceptor, Lord Brahma. And so he did that, and Krishna became pleased with him, and he gave him the benediction that you'll never be frustrated. And so then we see what happened is, for thousands of years, him and Devahuti, they traveled around the universe in this aerial mansion. They enjoyed. He expanded himself into 9 different forms. Each of these forms impregnated Devahuti, and instantly she gave birth to 9 daughters. And then she expresses her feelings that, I'm feeling frustrated because, okay, you're going to go off and take sannyas and you'll be fine. My daughters will find husbands, they'll look after them, but who will give me my spiritual emancipation? Because Devahuti she's quite an elevated soul, because also we see that she explains that, we've been engaging and enjoying on this aerial mansion, and but we've actually neglected our spiritual life. So we can see she was quite an elevated consciousness. She had quite an elevated consciousness. So then she asked Kadamba Muni, I want you to give me a son who can take care of me, who can actually guide me in spiritual life. And from that, we see that Kapila Muni appeared. So even though it seems, just like for a cursory glance at this pastime, you think, they're just like everyone else, they're just traveling around enjoying themselves. Nice facilities, they've got a beautiful aerial mansion, they go wherever they like, and it's like, as we're seeing here, it's just describing how beautiful this creation of Kadamba Muni is. Like even the floors, they've got emeralds in them. The walls are made of diamond. Can you imagine if all these walls were made of diamonds? And there's sapphires embedded in the diamonds, and it's just incredible opulence that you cannot conceive of it. Like if you go to Jaipur and places like that, also Delhi, the Red Fort, Taj Mahal, some of the old forts in Jaipur, you can see they have all these beautiful, what do you call them, the inlay work? I thought there's a particular name for it. Oh, filigree. No, it's a particular style of art. Anyway, what they do is that I've seen them do it in some temples. They carve into the marble and they fill it with jewels and different other types of stones. So you get this very beautiful, they can make trees and all different types of things. So you go to like the Taj Mahal, for instance, and you can see, especially if you go down into the tomb at the bottom, you can see how, what's his name? Shah Jahan, he actually had this built for his wife Mumtaz. And they've done all this this work, this ornate work, and you can see where there used to be stones and jewels, precious jewels, but later people came and pried them out with knives and stole them all. And same in the Red Fort, you can see the same thing. And even previously you'll see in India that many of the deities, they had like ruby eyes, sapphire eyes. There's in deity worship, it's described by Jiva Goswami that deities can be made of 8 different elements: earth, stone, metal, jewel, mind, different things like that. So one of them is jewel, and previously they actually there's different types of jewel they make. Some people say that the jewel means the shalagram. That's one thing, but then also you can see. I remember seeing years ago a deity of Ganesh that was carved out of a semi-precious stone, about this height, just the whole thing, just one stone. And other times they make these deities. I've got a picture on my laptop of these deities in a museum in India. And like what it is like the whole body is made of jewels, but they're small jewels, and they make it with gold. So the thing is made with gold, and all the jewels are held in place by gold. And the face and the hands will be carved of a single jewel, the face is carved of a single jewel. And you know, they're just they're so invaluable. You couldn't buy these things in this day and age just because of the cost. And you know, it's usually about this high. And just the amount of jewels in them is just phenomenal. You know, they've got diamonds in their eyes and, you know, pearls and all sorts. It's quite incredible what people went to, the expense they went to for worshipping the Lord. Anyhow, so this you see previously in India, there was so much opulence and so much wealth that was there. And even when you travel throughout Europe, you go to some of these old cathedrals and things like that. There's a place in Poland called Częstochowa. It's down in the south of Poland. They have this painting there called the Black Madonna. It's quite famous in Poland. And apparently what happened was during the war, there was a German soldier, a German officer, I think it was an SS officer, came there, and he wanted to defile this church. So he took his knife and he cut the painting with his sword or knife or whatever it was, and the painting started to bleed. And this is like a well-known history in Poland. And now we find that many people, it's become like a place of pilgrimage in Poland, where people go there and they pray to the Black Madonna and they get, you know, their various desires fulfilled. But what the thing is with the Black Madonna is you'll see like all the clothing on the painting is actually gold leaf. You know, and they have jewels and different things like that. And also I went to a place in outside of Zurich. It's a monastery and it's really amazing. And when you walk into the foyer of this monastery, they have Madonna up there. And it's kind of like she's situated in what looks like a starburst. She's floating in the sky. And it's got this starburst, and it's got like, you know, all these petals. It's incredibly beautiful. You can't take photos. They won't let you take photos. I tried to, and they came and stopped me. But the whole thing's gold. You know, and it's huge. It's like the starburst is like about this wide, and it's got all these like beams of light made of gold shooting out from it all around. And then she's adorned in all these different aspects of different features of gold. And again, you can imagine, you know, the wealth that was required to produce such a thing. So, and we see this is quite common in religious traditions. You know, you've got a Tirupati, the shikara or the domes on the temple. These are made of gold. You know, you've got many of the old temples in Vrindavan and all around the gates. That it's all made of silver, solid silver. What they used to do was you know, people would come and offer shoes, silver cups, silver crowns, the deities. When they became damaged, they'd save them up. And when they had sufficient, they'd melt them down and they'd make something out of silver for the deities. And you'll see that many of these temples have phenomenal wealth. And the purpose of the wealth is to satisfy the Lord. The same in Christianity previously. There was so much wealth in many of these churches. In Islam, same thing, so much wealth there. And the purpose of the wealth was to serve the Lord, not to enjoy the senses. But in a materialistic society, people take the wealth and they use it to satisfy themselves. They take whatever facility, whatever opulence they have to satisfy themselves. And as a result of this enjoying spirit, the suffering comes. But if we use whatever we have for the satisfaction of Krishna, then we become freed from the results of auspicious and inauspicious activities. Krishna explains this in the 9th chapter of the Gita. He says, Yat karosi yarasnasi, yat shrihoshi tyasya, yat tapasyashi kunteya, tat kurushamarapanam. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever austerities you perform, whatever you offer or give away, you do that as son of Kunti is offering for me. Then he goes on, and then the next verse is, what's that? Patram pushpam param toyam yoma bhakti parachiti. Tadaham bhakti parashritam ashnami prayatapnam. If one offers me love and devotion, leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept. It's ashnami, I'll accept it. And then in the next verse he says, Surva surva farere vam mokshake kamavana Sannyasa yoga vimukto vimukto mampaisis. He says, with your mind fixed on me, in this principle of renunciation, you'll become free from all the results of all auspicious and inauspicious activities. Sorry. And then I got the translation a bit mixed up. And he says, with mind fixed, you'll be liberated and thus you'll come to me. So this is the point. It's like we may have so much facility in this material world, and this is exactly what we see happening here in this wonderful pastime. Is Kardama Muni, he was just living in the forest as a sage, in a simple thatched hut, but he wasn't. He had so much. He accrued so much potency by his practice of bhakti, and ultimately we understand this potency comes from Krishna. He was empowered by the Lord to be able to do this because he had a particular service that the Lord wanted to do, and so the Lord empowered him to be able to do that. But he had so much potency that he was able to manifest so much opulence through his potency, yet he didn't become enamored by it. It's just like, just imagine, right? Any one of us got given, 10 million or 100 million or $1 billion. What would we do with it? Would we think, okay, I'll build Radha Govardhana a new temple, I'll make sure all the devotees have comfort, I'll take care of everyone, I wouldn't use anything for myself? No. Most of us, I know I would anyhow. I'd start thinking, okay, how can I situate myself so I'd never have to worry about anything ever again? I'll get a nice house, nice car, fixed deposit so I can live off the fixed deposit, apartment buildings so I can have the rent coming from the apartments. We think of stuff like this automatically because we don't have this degree of devotional service. Because we have material desires, and whenever facility comes, we use that facility as a means to satisfy my desires. But as is explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says, Krishna Bhakta Niskama Atta Eva Shanta. The Krishna Bhakta Niskama, no material desires, Atta Eva, therefore certainly, Shanta, he's peaceful. And we'll see, for people who have material desires, they can never be peaceful, because it says, Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami Sakali Ashanta. The Bhuktis, the Muktis, the Siddhis. So the Bhuktis, they're after enjoyment. They're seeking material enjoyment. The Muktis are after liberation. And the Siddhis, they're after mystic perfections, like we see is being described here, these different mystic perfections in these previous verses. So they have some desire because they can, if I get this perfection, if I can become lighter than the lightest, become smaller than the smallest, I can create planets and this and that, I can really enjoy it. People will come, they'll worship me. We see this, like it's quite common when people achieve some material facility, material ability, some mystic perfection, people worship them in various ways. Just like I was noticing this last night, I regularly go to a gym in town. Because one of the things you'll find is as you get older, the body starts to decay. And as the body decays, you're less able to do things. So in order to sustain service, you need to exercise. And Prabhupada mentions that. He says, do whatever's necessary to keep body and soul together so you can serve Krishna. This needs to be our primary motive, is to serve Krishna. Anyhow, there's one fellow there, I won't get too much into it, but there's one fellow there, and he's really buff, he's like really well built. And every time he comes in there, someone comes with a camera to take photos of him doing this, and he poses for himself. So because of this, there's half a dozen people there with him last night. You've probably seen this stuff, yeah? And because he's got some material perfection, because he's got this well-built body, people worship him. They become enamored by it because they're aspiring for it, but they can't have it. So when someone else has got it, they worship them. And this is what happens in this material world. If someone, just like people with great amounts of money, with great wealth, people are beating a path their door to try to please them because they want to get some of that wealth. They want to live the high life. Famous movie stars or rock stars and people like this, you see, they've got some material perfection or some material facility or ability, and people become enamored by that. And as it says in Chaitanya, this Bhukti, the Mukti, Siddhikami, Sakali Ashanta. It says certainly they can never be peaceful. because they've got material desires, because they want to improve themselves. And Kunti makes a similar point in this Janmaishvaya Shudashibi Edamana Madhavana Navahati Abidat Tumbai Tomakinchana Gocharam. She's praying to Krishna. The prayers of Queen Kunti in the 8th chapter of the first canto are quite extraordinary. Quite extraordinary. That she's praying to Krishna, it's like, my dear Lord, you can easily be approached. Because everyone's thinking it's so difficult to approach Krishna. The way we approach Krishna is by giving up all intention to try to enjoy in this material world. And this is exactly what Kardama Muni was doing. He gave up all intention to try to enjoy this material world. He just wanted to serve his preceptor. He just wanted to serve Krishna. And so Kunti is saying that you can be easily approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. You know, those who are not interested in trying to improve themselves in this material world by high birth, by great opulence, by beauty, by knowledge or learning. These things are not going to help us in this material world. So we see in these pastimes, especially pastimes like this, the teachings of Kunti and stuff, it's teaching us how to be good devotees. It's teaching us what is going to enable us to make spiritual advancement on the path of devotional service. Not that we're trying to increase or improve or develop our material facility, but we're simply trying to serve Krishna. And along with that service, facility may come. Material facility certainly will come. Just like we see, I was reflecting on this when I was in Vrindavan just recently. Because a lot of the festival there, it was the 50th anniversary of the installation of Krishna Balaram. And a lot of the devotees were reflecting on, the senior devotees, they were reflecting on what it was like when the temple opened. And they were dirt poor. They had no money. They even when they were building it, they had this thing, Prabhupada told them to do it. I can't remember what it, Prabhupada used a particular term where you would go to because they didn't have the money to buy even the materials for construction, the bricks and the reinforcing rod, the cement and stuff. And so Prabhupada encouraged them to go there and I can't remember what he called it, but where you kind of make a promise to the merchant that I'll pay you back. They used a particular name, and when the merchant heard this from one of the devotees, who's that devotee who lives up on the Gold Coast now? The Sunshine Coast? Grananava, yeah. He was telling this story about how Prabhupada had told him this system they used, and he went and spoke to the merchant. He said, "Oh, you know about this, And then so he arranged. He gave them all the materials without any payment, and they paid them later. And so they didn't have any money, but through their sincere practice of devotional service, through their sincere desire to please Prabhupada and to serve Krishna, we now have in ISKCON so much facility. And I think this is a really, even like it was just down in Melbourne, the 50th anniversary there, and some of the stories we heard, isn't it, about the early days of the Hare Krishna movement in Australia. It's really struggling to keep their heads above the water financially. It was always constantly a struggle. And but now we see in Australia we have so much opulence, so much facility, that we're all able to enjoy this facility. But I think it's really important for us to keep perspective on this, that actually it wasn't always like this, and because of the sincere service of these previous devotees, that so much facility has come. So it's good to express our gratitude and understand how we got to where we are, but also not to become attached to the facility, not to try to enjoy the facility that Krishna is providing, but simply to use this facility in Krishna's service. And this is the example that's being set here by Kardama Muni and Devahuti. That ultimately their focus is to please Krishna. Ultimately their focus is to go back home to Godhead, not to stay in this rotten material world trying to enjoy these stinking temporary material things. Because you experience so much facility here in this material world, but it's all temporary, it's all designed to bring misery. And how much can you really enjoy anyhow in the material body? So it's a really nice story because it just helps us to understand what the focus needs to be. And that's all I have to say. All right, any questions at all on that? Any comments? Yes, Srimad Jai Shila Prabhu, he's going to bring you a microphone because there's no doubt people online.
Hare Krishna. Not such a big question, but just following on the last part of what you were saying. My wife and I were coming up the hill this morning in the little, what do you call it, golf buggy. Yeah. And we were just thinking how no matter how you try to make some advancement, it always causes you difficulty. So the difficulty if you didn't have a golf buggy is walking up the hill and how long it would take and all the rest. Yeah. So you think, well, I'm in the golf buggy and it's a lot better, but when we sat in the golf buggy, it was full of dew, and we sat on it, our backside was absolutely soaking, and we couldn't see through the windscreen, and we were just saying it doesn't matter what facility, then you get a car and then it's a problem. I just thought I'd share that since you were talking.
A number of years ago I heard a really interesting, I'm not sure if it's a statistic, but I guess it's something like that. Back in the days of horse and cart, right, in London, the average speed of traffic from one side to London to the other was 12 kilometres an hour. Yeah. Now, we have cars that can do 300 kilometres an hour. Lamborghinis and all these, hypercars and stuff like that. And all this modern technology and the traffic lights, roundabouts, freeways, flyways, motorways, etc., etc. Interesting enough, the average speed of traffic from one side of London to the other is still 12 kilometres an hour. So what's the point? Yeah. Different type of noise now. But it's kind of interesting. It's like all this technological advancement, and it causes so much misery. I mean, how many people die each year in motor accidents? In Australia, it's about 3,000 people a year. In India, for every 100,000 vehicles on the road, 11 people a year die. In Australia, for every 100,000 vehicles, 5 people a year die in accidents. And that's not to count people who are maimed, disfigured, and all you have to do is to go into any accident or emergency in a hospital, and generally they have these pictures of people that have been injured in road accidents or killed in road accidents. It's pretty horrific. I remember years ago in Victoria, because Victoria they had quite a high road toll, and they came up with this advertising campaign, and it worked. It was a really effective advertising campaign. What they did is that there'd be a car crash and so many people were killed in the car crash. They'd take the car and stick it up on a billboard. The whole car, and just stick it up on a billboard. 5 people died in this accident. And it really hit home. I mean, the road toll went down substantially after that advertising campaign. It was all over Victoria. Krishna Maharaj.
Just a couple of things, just speaking a little bit to what Jai Srila Prabhu was saying, that I read in Bhagavatam that in the material world it's not a level playing field where you have some enjoyment and then you suffer the same amount, illicit enjoyment. But it's actually you suffer much more than what you enjoy. So your enjoyment level might be here, but your suffering level will be much, much higher. So it's we suffer a lot more than that we actually enjoy. That's described in Bhagavatam. The other thing I wanted to say was that...
Can I just respond to that?
Yeah, sure.
The thing is, though, everything in this material world is in balance. So it may be that this apparent imbalance in the suffering is because we're getting suffering from activities we performed in our past lives. There's no imbalance there. Everything is in perfect balance. So, according to the activities we perform, we get reactions. Perfect balance. So, it's really hard to understand how karma works. In fact, actually, we can't understand how karma works. We just understand the principle of it, but how it's actually going on, you really can't understand it.
The other thing I wanted to say was, just from a historical point of view, the reason why the Black Madonna is black is because she's the painting has been darkened over centuries from soot and incense.
Yeah.
And the final thing I wanted to say was Jashila Prabhu and Vimala Prabhu are giving, as you can see on the advertisements, giving some wonderful seminars. So I'd like to encourage devotees to go. I've attended one of their seminars years ago and it was really fantastic. Hare Krishna.
Anything else?
Good morning. Yeah, I liked what you said previously about not getting attached to, I guess, the material devotion here, but being able to take that devotion into the outside world and how to carry that devotion. Would you expand on your idea? Or the idea?
Sorry, I'm not following your point.
I just liked what you said. Like, it's very easy to have devotion in a place like this and to maintain that and to grow that. But it's also easy to become attached to what is here. So how to take that to the outside world, that devotion?
Yeah, that's often challenging, is to, like when you live in an environment like this, because you're constantly reminded of Krishna, there's so many supportive mechanisms here, or supportive sort of networks and stuff. So the easiest way to maintain it is to stay in that environment where you're sheltered, and that's the whole idea. It's like this temple is called an ashram. Ashram means shelter. When we live, in the brahmachari ashram, it's shelter. And so either we stay in the existing ashram, or if we have to, due to force of circumstance, if we have to go somewhere else, then wherever we go, we make that an ashram. So we're also sheltered from the material world. So it means wherever we live, we put up devotional pictures, we play bhajans, we chant japa the same as we do here, and very, very importantly, is we daily read scripture, especially Srila Prabhupada's books, because this will help to, Prabhupada says it himself, this will inoculate us against the onslaught of the material nature, because it's like that, it's an onslaught. All you have to do is you go from here into Moranbah. Moranbah is just a country town, but there's such a contrast between the two places. There's just, when people are attracted and influenced by the material nature, they tend to become very degraded, and their standards tend to drop. I mean, things that we would never consider doing here are just commonplace in a material environment. So, and Krishna, he says at the end of the Gita, always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage to me, thus you'll come to me without fail. So this is the way to protect ourselves, is just to be constantly engaged in the practice of bhakti. And it takes discipline, it takes determination. And that's part of why we're here in this environment, is to develop that, to develop the discipline. As a brahmachari, we rise early in the morning, we attend the morning program, we have quite a regulated lifestyle. And regulation is very helpful, because once you start to regulate yourself, there's an interesting experiment that was done, I think his name was Pavlov. You probably remember from the 60s a band called Pavlov's Dog. Yeah. Anyhow, so there was this guy called Pavlov, and he did these experiments on what he called conditioned reflex. And so he did, it's kind of, when you look at it, it's a little bit barbaric, some of the things he did, but he was just trying to understand how people become conditioned in particular ways. So one of the things he did was he had a box with, it had a divider in the middle, walls on it, stuff, and then it had metal plates either side. And he put a mouse in there, and he put a charge on this side, the mouse would jump over, then he put a charge on this side, the mouse would jump over, put a charge, and so, he's making the mouse jump back and forwards. Then he turned the electricity off, the mouse kept jumping, because it was conditioned. Another one he did was, he'd feed a dog, and every time he'd feed the dog, he'd blow the whistle. And so he'd blow the whistle, put the food down, the dog would come and eat. Then after a while, what he did was he'd just blow the whistle, and the dog would start to salivate, thinking it was going to get fed. So that's how, because this is a machine, the body, Krishna declares this in the fourth inch, he says, Yantra Rudrani Maya, that this body is a machine. So it's just like any machine, like an intelligent machine, you can condition it into certain functioning in a certain way. So the practice of bhakti is about training this machine to function in a particular way, training our consciousness to be becoming regularized to function in a particular way, because what you'll see happens is after years and years of practicing devotional service, the idea of doing it, like going back to what you did previously is so distasteful, because you become accustomed. And Krishna mentions this in the Gita also. What's that verse? For ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, one becomes fixed in consciousness. Because the senses tend to draw you towards lower tastes. But the only way of getting away from that is by training ourselves to develop a higher taste. It's just like when you do sport, You go and play tennis today. I don't know if you ever play tennis or not, but you may be able to do, something, but not particularly good. But through years of practice, you become quite skillful at it. So it's the same in the path of bhakti, is we become quite practiced to doing it in a particular way, and we become actually, conditioned in a sense to doing it like that. And then the idea of going back to something lesser is just unpalatable. Because you're ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste. It's just like, anyone who's ever smoked cigarettes, you become conditioned to it, but then after you stop, you start to, and your senses become cleansed from the all the garbage that you've been putting into your body. You start to taste things again. You get to know what food tastes like. You get to smell things again, and then the thought of going back to doing that again is really, no, I'm not going to do that ever again. It's really distasteful, and that's what happens on the path of bhakti. Is because there's param drishtva nivartate, Krishna says, this param drishtva, this higher taste, that you can never go back to these lower things. So the idea is just become conditioned to this practice, and you'll find wherever you go, that you'll just automatically gravitate towards that, because it's higher. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.